Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I understand. Is everyone okay? That must have been frightening. We'll take care of everything. I'm going to provide you with a rental vehicle. As soon as I get you down here, I'm going to send a tow truck right now. So as soon as you arrive here, we'll put you in a rental vehicle and we'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll rest assured that we will take care of you. Yes, sir. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Wheel fell off. Not a good scene. No matter whether you do everything right, you make the appointment, you greet the customer, you engage, you do the repair, you do everything right. You build the whole pyramid that we talked about. You create an exceptional experience. You fix it right the first time. Things happen. Things happen. You're always going to have some disgruntled customer. So let's talk about, first, what makes customers upset, and secondly, what you can do about it, how you handle a disgruntled customer. And I'll give you 3 things to use for every disgruntled customer that walks through your door. What makes customers upset? The biggest thing that makes customers upset, in my experience, is not feeling listened to. It usually is related to fixed right first time. They drop the vehicle off for service. It gets written up at the counter. Repairs get done. Maybe they get upsold too. And they drive the vehicle off the lot, and the problem still exists, and they don't feel like you ever listened to them. Or maybe you never confirmed their complaint, and you fixed what you thought their complaint was. And they get the vehicle home, and they discover, no, that rattle's still there. The vibration is still there. Not feeling listened to is the number 1 reason customers are upset. The number 2 reason is the vehicle wasn't fixed right. You didn't get fixed right first time. And number 3, their vehicle was altered in some manner. Like this gentleman on the phone, we had a wheel off situation. After it left here, we did an oil change and tire rotation, and he got about 10 miles down the road and the wheel dropped off. Everybody's okay. But it's not a situation that I enjoy handling. This gentleman, when he arrives, isn't going to be happy at all. How do I choose to handle that? Let me give you some advice on handling disgruntled customers. The first, and I think the biggest piece of advice, is don't talk. When he comes through that door, he's going to have an awful lot to say to me. And the last thing that gentleman wants to hear from my mouth is, I'm sorry. He's not looking for I'm sorry. First thing he's looking for is to vent. And I encourage you, when you get an angry customer in your store, let them vent. They're going to have a lot to say to you, and it may not be very nice. And the best thing you can do is zip your mouth and just take it. The storm will pass. At some point, they'll run out of steam, and they'll pause, and they'll take a deep breath, and they'll probably make a second run at you. And that's okay. You just actively listen to them. Get out from behind the terminal. Look them in the eye. Take what they can dish out. Okay? That second run, you'll pause eventually. Sometimes they'll make a third run. Usually they won't. If they do make a third run at you, it's usually pretty short. Make sure that pause is long enough that they've had a chance to say what they want to say. They need to get it out. Don't interrupt. Never say you're sorry. The second step, first is listening. Second step is empathy. Express empathy. Empathy is very, very different than sympathy. Very different. It feels different. It sounds different. Think about this. If that was your vehicle, that wheel just fell off, and you call me up on that phone, and you say, my wheel just fell off, and I say, I'm sorry about that, or, gee, I'm sorry. What does that feel like to you? Does that feel like anything to you? It feels kind of empty, doesn't it? You see, I've got a theory about I'm sorry. And I've got 3 kids at home, and watching these 3 kids, I've developed this hypothesis about why sorry just doesn't work in our world anymore. The 4-year-old grabs the whack-a-mole mallet, and she marches into the living room where the 8 and 10-year-old are watching TV. And she whacks the 8-year-old over the head with a whack-a-mole mallet, right? The 8-year-old jumps off the couch, goes running and screaming to Mommy, and says, Mommy, she hit me over the head. So what do you do with the 4-year-old? You send her back in to apologize to the 8-year-old. So she goes walking back in, she stomps her foot, she looks at him, and she says, sorry, and goes stomping out. What did the 8-year-old learn? All he learned was that You say sorry even though you're not. Because is she sorry? No, she's not sorry. And so I think we're conditioned at a really young age to know that sorry just doesn't mean what it's supposed to mean anymore. Empathy is very, very different. If your wheel falls off and I say to you, oh my goodness, that must have been frightening. Is everybody okay? That feels very, very different, doesn't it? Very different than, sorry about that. So express empathy. Listen, let them vent, don't say a word. And when it's your turn to speak, express empathy. Empathy can oftentimes just make the whole situation come down to a point where you can actually have the conversation. You're trying to get the customer to a point where you can have a reasonable conversation with that individual. And then the third piece is say what you're going to do. Action. Listen, empathy, action. They don't want hesitation. They don't want indecision at that point. They want to know what you're going to do. They've got a problem. They want to know what you're going to do. Make a decision. Now, it'll work every time for you. You'll at least get to the point where you can have the conversation. How you handle it from there can be a little bit tricky. In our seminar series, we use a lot of role plays. And we use very structured role plays with significant scenarios that have happened to all of us to talk about what options we have for handling these situations. Now, it's difficult to do that in the video environment, but let me suggest this to you. When you provide action to that customer, there are situations that you're not going to be able to resolve. Customer comes to you and they say, my wheel fell off after you serviced my vehicle. It's at my guy's garage. You're not touching it. Well, what do? You're never going to win that argument. You're not going to be able to get that vehicle back to your shop. So what do? You say, okay, I'll be more than happy to reimburse you. Do you mind if I call that shop and get their opinion on what happened with the vehicle? Because you as a shop, no matter what the situation is, no matter whether you can win the argument or not, whether it costs you a lot of money or not, you need to find out what happened so that you can resolve it. Because you don't want that same practice happening again and again and again. So you call the other shop in this scenario, and they're going to more than likely say, come on down, take a look at it with us, because they've been in that same situation too. Now, is that enough? Say we've refunded that customer his money. When this gentleman gets here on the tow truck, I will of course put him in a rental vehicle. I will of course pay for the tow, and I will pay to repair his vehicle, and I am going to reimburse him for the service that we provided him this morning. But is that enough? It's not. For some of you, you're saying, yeah, I've gone overboard. I paid for the rental, I paid for the tow, I made the situation right. But making the situation right is not enough. When I was a factory rep for a major manufacturer, and we went into a lemon law case, I would rather lose that lemon law case than win it. Why? Because if we lost that lemon law case, that customer was awarded another one of our vehicles. They stayed in one of our vehicles. If we won the lemon law case, we walk away patting ourselves on the back, what's that customer do? They drive to a different manufacturer and they buy a different vehicle, and we lost the customer. You can reimburse the customer for the service, you can pay for the tow, you can pay for the rental vehicle to address their inconvenience, but you need them to come back to you. You need to give them a reason to come back to this shop, because they're upset enough right now, they're never gonna. I suggest a free oil change. You don't have to give away the store. Give them a free oil change. What do oil changes cost you? In reality, you the shop. Not a whole lot, right? It's short labor. Parts don't cost you much. What does it mean to the customer? It could mean $35 to $90 to a customer, and it's something they have to do, and they know they have to do it. Eventually, this individual will calm down. Whether he comes back here or not with that free oil change card, he may give it to his son, he may give it to his neighbor, he may give it to somebody at work. Either way, somebody's going to get a free oil change at this shop. And that means I get to keep a customer. Whether it's this gentleman or another customer, I get a shot at showing this customer that we do good work here, that we can take care of them. Yeah, I got to build that whole pyramid again. But the point here is that I made the situation right, and I gave them a reason to come back. Always give disgruntled customers a reason to come back. So when they come to you and they're upset and they're blowing off steam, listen, empathy, action, and give them a reason to come back. Now, one last thing to say about disgruntled customers. Where do you draw the line? Someday you're going to have a customer that's so upset they're going to cross some lines. Whether it be with language, whether it be with actions, you need to think ahead of time how you're going to handle that situation. We all have a different line to draw. For me, it's language. I'll put up with a lot of language unless it's in my waiting room. If it's in my waiting room, I ask that customer to step outside. I inform the customer, I want to have this conversation with you. I'd like to do it either in my office or outside. Now, if they want an audience and they want to keep going, at some point I will say to them, sir, if you're going to continue to use this language, or ma'am, if you're going to continue to use this language, this conversation is going to have to end. I'll give them a warning. If they continue with it, I'll give them one more warning. And I will say to them, I'm going to walk away if you continue to use that language. I want to have this conversation with you, but I cannot have this conversation with you like this. And if they do it the third time, I will walk away. Usually they'll stop at that point. Only you know where your line is. But think about where that line is and think about how you're going to handle it when they get there. Give them a chance, but don't give them too many chances. And try to keep them away from your people in the waiting room. You don't want other customers hearing all this. Okay? So be prepared. Listen, empathy, action. Give them a reason to come back. And that will work for you. Practice it. Role play it. Attend a seminar. And keep up the great work. We'll see you soon.